A housekeeper had been working for years in the mansion of an authoritarian Arab millionaire in Dubai. During a business crisis, he summoned her to an important dinner, demanding she remain invisible. Against all odds, she stole the spotlight with innovative ideas. Sarah Mitchell wiped the sweat from her brow as she meticulously polished the marble floors of the Al Rahman mansion. For 6 years, she had maintained every corner of this opulent Dubai residence, moving through its halls like a shadow, careful to remain unseen and unheard. The mansion's owner, Karim Al Rahman, was one of Dubai's most prominent business figures, known as much for his ruthless business tactics as for his demanding nature. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the immaculate surfaces she had just cleaned. Sarah's reflection in the polished marble showed a woman in her early 30s, her brown hair pulled back in a practical bun, her uniform pristine despite hours of work. She had learned early on that Mr. Al Rahman expected nothing less than perfection. The intercom crackled to life, making her jump. "Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Al Rahman requests your presence in his study immediately." The voice of Ahmad, the house manager, carried its usual tone of detached efficiency. Sarah's heart raced. In 6 years, she had never been summoned to the study. Her interactions with Mr. Al Rahman were limited to brief encounters in hallways, where he would pass by without acknowledgement, as though she were part of the furniture. She quickly straightened her uniform and made her way through the mansion's winding corridors. The study door loomed before her, its dark wood gleaming with age and polish. She knocked softly, and a deep voice commanded her to enter. Karim Al Rahman sat behind an imposing desk, his attention fixed on a tablet screen. At 45, he cut an impressive figure, his tailored suit emphasizing his athletic build, his dark eyes sharp with intelligence and authority. "Sit," he ordered, without looking up. Sarah perched on the edge of a leather chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The silence stretched for several minutes as he continued to read, the only sound the soft whir of the air conditioning and the occasional tap of his finger on the screen. Finally, he set the tablet down and fixed her with an appraising stare. "Tonight, I am hosting a crucial business dinner at La Maison d'Or. You will accompany me." Sarah blinked in surprise. "Sir, my usual assistant is unavailable, and I require someone to manage certain details during the evening. You have worked here long enough to understand how things should be done." His tone made it clear this was not a request, but an order. "Of course, sir," Sarah replied automatically, though her mind was racing with questions. "You will need appropriate attire. Ahmad will arrange it. But understand this," he leaned forward, his expression stern. "Your role is to remain invisible. You will not speak unless spoken to, and even then, keep your responses brief and deferential. These are important investors, and I cannot afford any distractions." Sarah nodded, her face carefully neutral despite the sting of his words. "I understand, sir. The car will leave at 7. Be ready." He turned back to his tablet, dismissing her. As Sarah left the study, her mind was churning. In the kitchen, she found Ahmad waiting with a garment bag. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "Mr. Al Rahman had this delivered. There are shoes and accessories as well." Inside her modest room in the staff quarters, Sarah unzipped the bag to reveal an elegant black dress, simple but clearly expensive. The matching shoes and clutch were equally refined. As she prepared for the evening, she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to change. At precisely 7, Sarah stood in the mansion's foyer, transformed by the designer outfit. The dress fit perfectly, making her wonder how Mr. Al Rahman had known her size. Her hair was styled in an elegant updo, her makeup subtle but professional. Karim Al Rahman descended the grand staircase, adjusting his cufflinks. He paused briefly when he saw her, something unreadable flickering across his face before his usual mask of indifference returned. "Acceptable," he said curtly, striding past her toward the waiting car. The drive to La Maison d'Or was silent, the city's lights creating a glittering backdrop through the car's tinted windows. Sarah watched as they passed the towering skyscrapers and luxury hotels that defined Dubai's skyline. She could feel the weight of the evening ahead pressing down on her, along with the curious glances from the driver in the rearview mirror. As they pulled up to the restaurant, Mr. Al Rahman finally spoke. "Remember what I said. You are here to facilitate, not participate." These investors represent potential billions in funding for my company's expansion. Do not do anything to jeopardize this evening." Sarah nodded silently, but as she stepped out of the car, she felt a sudden surge of determination. She might be invisible to him, but she had spent years observing, learning, and understanding the intricacies of both business and human nature from her unique vantage point. Little did she know that this evening would challenge everything about her carefully maintained role as the invisible woman of the Al Rahman mansion. La Maison d'Or lived up to its name, with golden accents adorning every surface of the exclusive restaurant. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the intimate dining space, where Dubai's elite gathered for discreet business dealings and social positioning. Sarah followed Mr. Al Rahman at a carefully measured distance, observing how the staff seemed to materialize and disappear with practiced efficiency. The private dining room awaited them, its walls lined with hand-painted silk panels depicting ancient trade routes. Around an elegantly set table sat 5 people who radiated power and influence. Sarah recognized them from financial magazines and news coverage: the Zhang siblings from Hong Kong's largest tech conglomerate, Marcus Reynolds from a prominent American venture capital firm, and 2 Saudi princes known for their strategic investments. "Karim, my friend," Marcus stood, his American informality contrasting sharply with the formal atmosphere. "And who is this lovely addition to our party?" Mr. Al Rahman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "This is Ms. Mitchell, my assistant for the evening. She'll ensure everything runs smoothly." His tone suggested that was all that needed to be said on the matter. Sarah took her assigned seat at the far end of the table, positioning herself to be as unobtrusive as possible. The conversation flowed around her, touching on market trends, technological innovations, and the ever-shifting landscape of global finance. She listened intently while maintaining an expression of polite detachment. "The problem with modern business," Prince Abdullah was saying, "is that too many companies forget the human element. They focus on algorithms and automation, but lose sight of what truly drives success." Mr. Al Rahman nodded sagely. "That's why my new expansion plan emphasizes technological integration while maintaining traditional values. We've developed a comprehensive strategy that—" "What do you think, Ms. Mitchell?" Lisa Zhang's question cut through the air like a knife, causing all heads to turn towards Sarah. Mr. Al Rahman's expression darkened, but Lisa continued, "You must have interesting insights, working so closely with the company." Sarah felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Mr. Al Rahman's warning echoed in her mind, but something else stirred within her. 6 years of careful observation, of watching both success and failure unfold in the business world from her unique perspective. "Perhaps," she began carefully, "I could offer a different perspective." She paused, noting how Marcus Reynolds leaned forward with interest. "In my experience, the most successful initiatives are those that create bridges between different levels of an organization." "Go on," Marcus encouraged, ignoring Mr. Al Rahman's attempt to redirect the conversation. "I've observed that companies often treat innovation and tradition as opposing forces when they could be complementary. For instance, while artificial intelligence can streamline operations, it's the understanding of human relationships and cultural nuances that often determines success in the Middle Eastern market." Sarah warmed to her subject, drawing on years of watching business deals unfold in the mansion's meeting rooms. Take the recent failure of Tech Global's expansion into Dubai. They had superior technology, but failed to understand the importance of personal connections in local business culture. A successful strategy needs to weave together technological advancement with deep cultural awareness. The table had fallen silent, all attention focused on her words. Even Prince Abdullah was nodding thoughtfully. "You speak of the harmony between progress and tradition," he said. "This is precisely what we seek in our investments." Lisa Zhang's eyes sparkled with interest. "And how would you implement such a strategy in practical terms?" Sarah outlined a vision of integrated systems that respected cultural values while pushing technological boundaries. She spoke of creating innovation hubs that doubled as community centers, of using artificial intelligence to preserve and promote cultural heritage. With each word, she drew from countless observations made while serving tea during business meetings, cleaning offices during late-night strategy sessions, and maintaining the spaces where million-dollar deals were struck. Mr. Al-Rahman sat rigid in his chair, his knuckles white around his water glass. The conversation had slipped entirely from his control, with investors now directing their questions to Sarah, building on her ideas and exploring possibilities she presented. "Remarkable insight," Marcus declared, raising his glass in Sarah's direction. "Karim, you've been holding out on us. Your assistant shows a deep understanding of the challenges we've been discussing for months." The evening continued, with Sarah increasingly drawn into the discussion, her quiet confidence growing with each exchange. She noticed Mr. Al-Rahman's expression alternating between fury and disbelief as his carefully orchestrated dinner transformed into something entirely unexpected. As the evening drew to a close, Lisa Zhang pressed her business card into Sarah's hand. "We should continue this conversation," she whispered. "Your perspective is refreshing." The drive back to the mansion was charged with tension. Sarah could feel Mr. Al-Rahman's anger radiating across the car's interior, but beneath her anxiety, a new sensation was taking root. The realization that she had found her voice, and it had resonated with some of the most influential people in the business world. What she didn't know was that this dinner would set in motion a chain of events that would reshape not only her future, but the entire power dynamic she had known for the past 6 years. The invisible woman had stepped into the light, and the business world had taken notice. The mansion's grand entrance had never felt more imposing than it did that night, as Sarah followed Mr. Al-Rahman inside. The clicking of her heels on marble echoed through the silent foyer, each step marking the countdown to what she knew would be an explosive confrontation. "My office, now." His words cut through the silence like shards of ice. Inside the study, Sarah stood straight-backed before his desk, no longer the meek housekeeper, but a woman who had found her strength. Mr. Al-Rahman paced behind his desk, his usual composed demeanor cracking under barely contained fury. 6 years, he began, his voice dangerously quiet. 6 years, I provided you with employment, with accommodation, with security. And this is how you repay my generosity. By undermining me in front of the most important investors in Dubai. Sir, I only answered their questions honestly. Honestly? He whirled to face her. You had no right to speak at all. Your role was to be invisible, to serve, not to lecture about business strategies you know nothing about. Sarah lifted her chin slightly. With respect, sir, I know more than you think. Watching and learning has been my life for 6 years in this house. Watching and learning? He laughed bitterly. You clean houses. You serve tea. You are not a business strategist, Ms. Mitchell. You are the help. The words stung, but Sarah refused to flinch. Those investors seemed to think differently. Those investors were merely amused by the novelty of a servant playing at being an executive. Tomorrow, they will have forgotten all about you and your presumptuous ideas. Sarah thought of Lisa Zhang's business card, safely tucked away in her room. Perhaps, but their interest seemed genuine. Enough! Mr. Al-Rahman slammed his hand on the desk. For you are fired. Pack your things and be gone by morning. I want no trace of you in this house when the sun rises. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah had expected this, but the reality still felt like a physical blow. Very well, sir. Thank you for the opportunity you provided these past 6 years. She turned to leave, her dignity intact, when his voice stopped her. And Ms. Mitchell? Don't expect references. No one in Dubai will hire you after this. Sarah paused at the door, looking back at the man who had wielded such power over her life for so long. You know, Mr. Al-Rahman, true leadership isn't about keeping people invisible. It's about helping them shine. In her modest room, Sarah packed her few belongings with methodical precision. Her hands trembled slightly as she folded her uniforms, leaving them pressed and ready for whoever would replace her. The designer dress from the dinner she hung carefully in its garment bag, a souvenir of the night she found her voice. As she packed, her mind wandered to the countless conversations she had overheard over the years. The business strategies discussed in the garden during afternoon tea, the investment decisions debated in the living room, the market analyses shared over dinner. She had absorbed it all, building an understanding of the business world that apparently surpassed even her own awareness, until tonight. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hesitating briefly, she answered. Ms. Mitchell. "This is Marcus Reynolds. I apologize for the late call, but I had a feeling you might still be awake." Sarah sat on her bed, heart pounding. "Mr. Reynolds, this is unexpected." "Not really. Listen, I heard through my sources what happened. Karim can be predictable in his reactions, but his loss might be our gain. I'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning. Properly this time, without any pretense of you being anyone's assistant. I would be honored, Mr. Reynolds." "Excellent. The address downtown, 9 a.m. And Ms. Mitchell, bring those innovative ideas of yours. I think it's time they found the right audience." After hanging up, Sarah looked around her small room one last time. 6 years of memories, of learning, of watching from the shadows. But tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she would step into the light on her own terms. As she finished packing, a text message arrived from Lisa Zhang. "Heard the news. Don't worry, some doors close so better ones can open. See you soon." Sarah smiled, realizing that her firing might not be the end she had feared, but rather the beginning she had never dared to dream of. Outside her window, the Dubai skyline glittered with possibility, its lights promising a future where she would no longer be invisible. What she didn't know was that her meeting with Marcus Reynolds would set in motion events that would not only transform her life, but would eventually bring her face to face with Mr. Al-Rahman again, under very different circumstances. The game of power and influence in Dubai's business world was about to gain an unexpected new player. The address downtown stood as a gleaming testament to Dubai's ambition, its sleek lines piercing the morning sky. Sarah stepped into the lobby, her second-hand suit a stark contrast to the opulence surrounding her. Yet she walked with a newfound confidence, the events of the past 24 hours having awakened something within her that refused to be silenced. Marcus Reynolds waited for her in a private meeting room, his casual demeanor belying his reputation as one of the shrewdest venture capitalists in the business. "Ms. Mitchell," he greeted her warmly, "I'm glad you could make it. I hope you don't mind, but I've invited a few colleagues to join us." As if on cue, Lisa Zhang entered, followed by her brother Michael and Prince Abdullah. Sarah's heart raced, but she maintained her composure, shaking hands with each of them. "Let's cut to the chase," Marcus began once they were all seated. "What you said last night wasn't just insightful, it was revolutionary. You managed to articulate a vision that we've all been dancing around for months. We want to hear more." For the next 2 hours, Sarah laid out her ideas in detail, drawing from her years of silent observation and her innate understanding of both human nature and business dynamics. She spoke of creating a business model that integrated cutting-edge technology with deep cultural sensitivity, of building companies that were not just profitable, but also socially responsible. "The future of business in this region," she explained, "lies in understanding that progress doesn't have to come at the expense of tradition. It's about creating synergies between the old and the new, the local and the global." As she spoke, she could see the excitement building in her audience's eyes. They interrupted frequently with questions, challenging her on specifics, but Sarah held her ground, her confidence growing with each exchange. "This is exactly what we've been looking for," Lisa declared as Sarah concluded her presentation. "A fresh perspective that bridges cultures and technologies." Prince Abdullah nodded in agreement. "Your ideas could revolutionize how we approach development in the Gulf region." Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. "Sarah, we're prepared to offer you a position. Not just any position, but a leadership role in a new venture we're creating. We want you to be the face of this new approach to business in the Middle East." Sarah's mind reeled. Just yesterday, she had been a housekeeper, invisible and voiceless. Now, she was being offered the chance to lead a pioneering business venture. I'm honored," she managed to say. "But I have no formal business education, no connections." "Education can be acquired," Michael Zhang interjected. "Connections can be made. What you have, insight, vision, and a unique perspective, that's much rarer and more valuable." "We're not just offering you a job," Lisa added. "We're offering you a partnership. We believe in your vision, Sarah. We want to invest in you." The next few hours were a whirlwind of discussions about equity stakes, development plans, and strategic partnerships. By the time Sarah left the address downtown, her head was spinning with the possibilities that had suddenly opened up before her. As she stepped out into the Dubai sunshine, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Ahmad, her former colleague at the Al Rahman mansion. Mr. Al Rahman is furious. He's been making calls all morning, trying to blacklist you in Dubai's business circles. Be careful. Sarah's jaw tightened. She had expected retaliation, but the speed and intensity of it surprised her. She quickly typed out a response. Thank you for the warning, Ahmad. Take care of yourself. Over the next few weeks, Sarah's life transformed at a dizzying pace. She moved into a small but modern apartment provided by her new partners. Her days were filled with intense learning sessions, crash courses in finance, marketing, and corporate law. Nights were spent refining her vision, turning her ideas into concrete business plans. Her new role as the face of Nexus Innovations, the name they had chosen for their venture, thrust her into the spotlight. There were interviews with business journals, speaking engagements at conferences, and meetings with potential investors and partners. Through it all, Sarah could feel the invisible hand of Mr. Al Rahman working against her. Meetings would be mysteriously cancelled. Potential partners would suddenly become hesitant, citing concerns about her background. But for every door that closed, Sarah found two more opening. Her unique perspective and genuine passion for creating positive change resonated with many who had grown weary of business as usual. 3 months after that fateful dinner, Sarah stood on stage at the Dubai Future Forum, addressing an audience of global business leaders and innovators. As she spoke about the need for a new paradigm in business, one that valued human connection as much as technological advancement, she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. Mr. Al Rahman sat in the back row, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and Sarah felt a mix of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also a strange sense of gratitude. His dismissal had been the catalyst for her transformation. As applause filled the auditorium at the conclusion of her speech, Sarah realized that this was just the beginning. She had found her voice, her purpose, and she was determined to use it to reshape the business world in ways that would benefit not just the elite, but everyone. What she didn't know was that her rising star was about to collide with Mr. Al Rahman's empire in ways neither of them could have anticipated. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of Dubai's business community and force both Sarah and her former employer to confront painful truths about themselves and the world they operated in. A year had passed since Sarah's dramatic exit from the Al Rahman mansion, and the landscape of Dubai's business world had shifted dramatically. Nexus Innovations, under Sarah's leadership, had become a beacon of progressive business practices, attracting partners and clients who were eager to be part of a new wave of socially responsible entrepreneurship. Sarah stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, overlooking the bustling city below. The view was a far cry from the small room she once occupied in the servants' quarters. Her phone buzzed with a message from Lisa Zhang. Big news. Check your email. The email contained a confidential report on Al Rahman Industries. The company was in trouble, hemorrhaging investors and losing market share at an alarming rate. Sarah read through the details with a mix of surprise and concern. Despite their past, she took no joy in seeing the struggles of her former employer. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Marcus Reynolds entered, his usual confident stride slightly hesitant. Sarah, we need to talk. It's about Al Rahman Industries. Sarah nodded, gesturing for him to take a seat. I just read the report. It's worse than I expected. Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. Our investors see an opportunity here. They want us to consider a takeover. Sarah's eyes widened. A takeover? Of Al Rahman Industries? It makes strategic sense, Marcus explained. Their infrastructure and market presence combined with our innovative approach could be revolutionary. Plus, it would solidify our position as the leading force in Middle Eastern business. Sarah's mind raced with the implications. And Mr. Al Rahman? What would happen to him? Marcus shrugged. He'd likely be offered a position on the board, but operational control would pass to us, to you specifically. The investors are adamant about that. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. Just a year ago, she had been fired by Mr. Al Rahman, told she would never work in Dubai again. Now she was being offered control of his company. I'll need time to think about this, Sarah said finally. Of course, Marcus replied, standing to leave, but don't take too long. In this business, hesitation can cost everything. After Marcus left, Sarah found herself unable to focus on work. She decided to take a walk, needing the fresh air to clear her head. As she strolled through a nearby park, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this crossroads. She thought of the countless hours she had spent in Mr. Al-Rahman's mansion, observing, learning, and dreaming of a day when her voice would be heard. She remembered the sting of his dismissal, the fear and uncertainty that had followed. But she also recalled the opportunities that had opened up, the people who had believed in her when she was at her lowest. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Sarah came to a decision. She would pursue the takeover, but not out of revenge or a desire for power. She would do it because she genuinely believed she could make a difference, not just for the company, but for all the people it employed and the communities it served. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and strategic planning. Sarah threw herself into the work, analyzing every aspect of Al-Rahman Industries, identifying areas for improvement and innovation. She was determined that if this takeover happened, it would be more than just a change in ownership. It would be a complete transformation. Finally, the day of the board meeting arrived. Sarah stood outside the imposing doors of Al-Rahman Industries headquarters, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. As she entered the boardroom, she locked eyes with Mr. Al-Rahman for the first time since that night in his study. He looked older, the stress of recent months etched into the lines of his face, but his eyes still held that same intensity, now mixed with a hint of resignation. As Sarah took her seat at the head of the table, she could feel the weight of history between them. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, addressing the board members and major shareholders, "we're here today to discuss the future of Al-Rahman Industries. But before we begin, I want to make one thing clear. This isn't about personal vendettas or power plays. It's about creating a company that can thrive in the modern world while staying true to the values and traditions that have always been at its core." As she laid out her vision for the company's future, Sarah could see the mix of emotions playing across Mr. Al-Rahman's face: surprise, skepticism, and perhaps a grudging respect. She spoke of integrating cutting-edge technology with traditional business practices, of creating a corporate culture that valued every employee from the boardroom to the mailroom. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, Mr. Al-Rahman stood up. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, his voice carrying a hint of his old authority. "A year ago I made the mistake of underestimating you. I won't make that mistake again. Your vision for this company is impressive. But I have one question. How do you plan to implement these changes without losing the essence of what made Al-Rahman Industries successful in the first place?" It was a challenge, but also an opening. As Sarah began to answer, she realized that this moment wasn't just about a business takeover. It was about bridging two worlds, two perspectives, and creating something entirely new in the process. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and obstacles. But as Sarah engaged in a spirited discussion with Mr. Al-Rahman and the board, she felt a sense of excitement and purpose. This was her chance to prove that success in business didn't have to come at the cost of ethics or compassion. What Sarah didn't know was that this meeting would set in motion a series of events that would not only redefine Al-Rahman Industries, but would also challenge her in ways she never expected. The real test of her leadership was just beginning. The months following the takeover were a whirlwind of activity. Sarah found herself at the helm of a corporate giant, tasked with steering it through treacherous waters of change. The merger of Nexus Innovations and Al-Rahman Industries, now rebranded as Harmony Global, was more than just a business transaction. It was a clash of cultures, ideologies, and expectations. Sarah's office became a war room of sorts, where strategy sessions often stretched late into the night. She was determined to make good on her promises, to prove that her vision of a socially responsible, technologically advanced, and culturally sensitive business model could succeed on a grand scale. But the challenges were immense. Old guard executives, loyal to Mr. Al-Rahman's way of doing things, resisted change at every turn. Sarah found herself constantly navigating a minefield of office politics, trying to win over skeptics without alienating her supporters. One particularly tense meeting stood out in her memory. Sarah had proposed a radical overhaul of the company's manufacturing processes to make them more environmentally friendly. The boardroom erupted into chaos. "This is madness," exclaimed Fahad, a long-time executive, These changes will cost millions and cut into our profits. We can't afford such luxury in today's market. Sarah stood her ground. What we can't afford is to be left behind. Sustainability isn't just a buzzword. It's the future of business. Companies that don't adapt will become obsolete. To her surprise, it was Mr. Al-Rahman who spoke up in her defense. Ms. Mitchell may be pushing us out of our comfort zone, but she's not wrong. The world is changing, and we must change with it. His support, however grudging, marked a turning point. Slowly but surely, Sarah's ideas began to take root. She implemented a mentorship program that paired seasoned executives with young, innovative thinkers. She launched community outreach initiatives that not only improved the company's image, but also opened up new markets and partnerships. But success brought its own set of problems. Sarah's rising profile in the business world made her a target for critics and competitors alike. Rumors and whisper campaigns circulated, questioning her qualifications and suggesting that her success was due to manipulation rather than merit. The pressure began to take its toll. Sarah found herself working longer hours, sleeping less, the weight of responsibility a constant presence. She missed the simplicity of her old life, the clarity of purpose that came with her housekeeping duties. One evening, as she was leaving the office well past midnight, she ran into Mr. Al-Rahman in the parking garage. He looked at her with an expression that mingled concern with something that might have been admiration. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, "a word of advice, if I may. Don't let the company consume you. I made that mistake, and it cost me more than I care to admit." Sarah was taken aback by his candor. "I appreciate the concern, Mr. Al-Rahman, but there's so much at stake. We're not just changing a company, we're trying to change an entire business culture." He nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, but change doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen if you burn yourself out. Remember, true leadership is about inspiring others to act, not trying to do everything yourself." His words stayed with Sarah, prompting her to reassess her approach. She began to delegate more, to trust in the team she had built. She made a conscious effort to maintain a work-life balance, even taking up yoga and meditation to manage her stress. As she learned to step back and empower others, Sarah saw her vision for the company start to truly take shape. Harmony Global began to make headlines for all the right reasons: innovative products, ethical business practices, and a corporate culture that was becoming the envy of the industry. But just as things seemed to be stabilizing, a crisis erupted that would test Sarah's leadership like never before. A major project in Africa, one that predated her tenure but which she had enthusiastically supported, ran into serious trouble. Reports emerged of environmental damage and labor disputes, threatening to undo all the goodwill the company had built. Sarah found herself at the center of a media storm. Journalists who had once praised her as a visionary now questioned her judgment. Investors grew nervous, and there were whispers of a board revolt. In the midst of this turmoil, Sarah received an unexpected visit from Lisa Zhang. "You know, Sarah," Lisa said, studying her friend's tired face, "this crisis might be the best thing that could have happened to you." "How can you say that?" Sarah asked, bewildered. "Because now you have the chance to show what you're really made of. It's easy to lead when everything's going well. True leadership reveals itself in times of crisis." As Sarah pondered Lisa's words, she realized that this was indeed her moment of truth. How she handled this crisis would define not just her career, but the future of the company and all the people who depended on it. With renewed determination, Sarah began to formulate a plan. She would fly to Africa herself, see the situation firsthand, and take whatever steps were necessary to make things right. It would be risky, potentially career-ending if it went wrong, but she knew in her heart it was the right thing to do. As she prepared for the journey that could make or break everything she had worked for, Sarah couldn't help but reflect on how far she had come. From an invisible housekeeper to the CEO of a global corporation, her journey had been nothing short of extraordinary. But she knew that the true measure of her success would be determined not by titles or profits, but by the positive impact she could make on the world. Little did Sarah know that her decision to confront the African crisis head-on would lead to discoveries and challenges that would shake the foundations of everything she thought she knew about business, ethics, and herself. The humid air of Central Africa hit Sarah like a wall as she stepped off the private jet. Gone were the gleaming skyscrapers of Dubai, replaced by the lush wild beauty of the continent that had become the focal point of her company's most significant crisis. As her team assembled on the tarmac, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. This wasn't just about saving a project or protecting the company's reputation. Real lives and livelihoods were at stake. "Ms. Mitchell," a voice called out. She turned to see a tall, weathered man approaching. "I'm Dr. James Okafor, the lead environmental scientist on the project." Sarah shook his hand, noting the worry lines etched deep in his face. "Dr. Okafor, I hope you can help us understand what's really happening here." The next few days were a whirlwind of site visits, community meetings, and intense discussions with local officials. Sarah saw firsthand the complexity of the situation. The project, a large-scale sustainable energy initiative, had promised to bring clean power and economic opportunities to the region. But its implementation had run into a host of unforeseen challenges. In a remote village affected by the project, Sarah sat with a group of elders, listening to their grievances through an interpreter. Their words painted a picture far different from the glowing reports she had received back in Dubai. "The company promised us jobs and development," one elder said, his eyes filled with disappointment. "But our sacred lands have been disturbed, and the jobs went to outsiders. We feel betrayed." As Sarah dug deeper, she uncovered a web of miscommunication, cultural misunderstandings, and in some cases, outright negligence. Some of her own executives, she realized with a sinking heart, had cut corners and ignored local concerns in their rush to meet deadlines and budgets. One evening, as she pored over reports in her makeshift office, Mr. Al-Rahman called. "The board is getting restless, Ms. Mitchell," he warned. "They're talking about pulling the plug on the entire project. You need to give them something, and fast." Sarah felt the pressure mounting, but she refused to be rushed into a decision. She knew that a quick fix wouldn't solve the underlying issues. What was needed was a complete reimagining of the project, one that truly integrated local needs and values. With Dr. Okafor's help, Sarah began to craft a new vision for the project. They worked tirelessly, meeting with community leaders, environmental experts, and local entrepreneurs. Slowly, a new plan began to take shape, one that would not only provide clean energy, but also support indigenous businesses, preserve cultural heritage, and restore damaged ecosystems. As the plan came together, Sarah faced her greatest challenge yet. She needed to convince the board to invest more money and time into a project they were ready to abandon. It would mean admitting to mistakes, facing potential legal repercussions, and risking her own position. The night before her video presentation to the board, Sarah couldn't sleep. She walked out of her temporary lodgings, finding herself under a vast African sky filled with stars. The beauty and majesty of it all struck her deeply. A soft voice beside her made her jump. It was Amara, a young local woman who had been working as her guide. "You carry a heavy burden," Amara said simply. Sarah nodded, feeling the weight of her decisions. "I'm trying to do the right thing, but I'm not sure if it will be enough," Amara smiled. "In our tradition, we believe that true wisdom comes from listening to the land and to each other. You have listened. Now you must trust in the path that has been revealed." Those words stayed with Sarah as she faced the board the next day. With unwavering conviction, she presented her plan. She acknowledged the mistakes that had been made, but focused on the transformative potential of the reimagined project. "This isn't just about salvaging an investment," she concluded. "It's about setting a new standard for how global companies can work in true partnership with local communities. It's about proving that profit and positive impact can go hand in hand." The silence that followed her presentation felt eternal. Then, to her surprise, it was Mr. Al-Rahman who spoke first. "Ms. Mitchell, when I first met you, I underestimated your potential. I'm not going to make that mistake again. I believe in this vision. You have my support." One by one, other board members voiced their agreement. It wouldn't be easy, and there were still many hurdles to overcome, but Sarah had won the chance to make things right. As the weeks passed, Sarah threw herself into implementing the new plan. She worked closely with local communities, ensuring their voices were heard and their needs addressed. Slowly but surely, the project began to turn around. The negative press began to shift, with stories of innovation and community partnership replacing tales of corporate greed. On her last day in Africa, Sarah stood on a hilltop overlooking the project site. Solar panels glinted in the distance, while newly planted trees swayed in the breeze. A school built as part of the community development program buzzed with the sounds of children learning. Amara joined her, a proud smile on her face. "You have brought change, Ms. Mitchell, not just to this land, but to the way business can be done." Sarah felt a sense of accomplishment, but also humility. She knew that this was just the beginning of a longer journey. As she prepared to return to Dubai, she carried with her not just lessons in crisis management, but a deeper understanding of the true meaning of responsible leadership. What Sarah didn't realize was that her experiences in Africa had set in motion events that would soon challenge her in ways she could never have imagined, forcing her to confront not just external obstacles, but her own deepest fears and desires. Sarah's return to Dubai was met with a hero's welcome. The successful turnaround of the African project had not only salvaged Harmony Global's reputation, but had set a new standard for ethical business practices in challenging environments. The business world was abuzz with talk of the Mitchell method, a holistic approach to corporate responsibility that balanced profit with social and environmental concerns. As she stepped into her office, Sarah was greeted by a sea of congratulatory flowers and a stack of interview requests from major business publications. She had become the face of a new era in Middle Eastern business, a symbol of progress and innovation. But even as she basked in the glow of success, Sarah felt a nagging unease. The whirlwind of the past year had left little time for personal reflection. She had achieved more than she had ever dreamed possible, yet something felt missing. Her musings were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Mr. Al-Rahman, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips, "the board has made a decision. We want to expand your role. We're proposing to make you the global CEO of Harmony Enterprises, overseeing all our international operations." Sarah was stunned. This was the pinnacle of corporate success, a position she could never have imagined holding just a few years ago. I'm honored," she managed to say, "but it's such a huge responsibility." Mr. Al-Rahman nodded. "It is. But you've proven yourself more than capable. You've transformed this company, Sarah. You've transformed the way we do business." As he left, Sarah sank into her chair, her mind reeling. She should have been elated, but instead, she felt a strange sense of emptiness. She picked up a framed photo on her desk, a snapshot from her time in Africa, showing her surrounded by smiling villagers. The joy and connection in that moment felt far removed from the sterile luxury of her Dubai office. Over the next few weeks, as Sarah prepared to step into her new role, she found herself increasingly distracted. The work that had once energized her now felt routine. She caught herself gazing out of her office window, wondering about the lives being lived in the bustling city below. It was during this time that an unexpected opportunity arose. A small but innovative tech startup in Silicon Valley, known for its groundbreaking work in sustainable energy solutions, was looking for investors. The company's ethos aligned perfectly with Sarah's vision, but it was considered too risky by most of Harmony's board members. Sarah saw in this startup a chance to make a real difference, to get back to the hands-on work that had inspired her in Africa. But pursuing this investment would mean going against the board's wishes and potentially jeopardizing her new position. As she grappled with this decision, Sarah received a surprise visit from Lisa Zhang. Over dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Dubai skyline, Sarah confided her doubts and frustrations. Lisa listened intently before speaking. "Sarah, do you remember what I told you when we first offered you a position? We weren't just investing in your ideas, we were investing in you. The question is, what do you want to invest in?" Sarah pondered Lisa's words long into the night. She thought about her journey, from an invisible housekeeper to a powerful CEO. She had achieved everything she had ever thought she wanted, but at what cost? The next morning, Sarah made her decision. She called an emergency board meeting and, to everyone's shock, announced her intention to step down as global CEO. Instead, she proposed a new role for herself, heading a new division focused on identifying and nurturing innovative startups that aligned with Harmony's evolving mission. The boardroom erupted into chaos. Some members accused her of being ungrateful, others of being naive. But Mr. Al-Rahman, after a moment of stunned silence, raised his hand for quiet. "Ms. Mitchell," he said slowly. "I admit I don't fully understand your decision, but I've learned to trust your instincts. If this is what you believe is right, then you have my support." With the board's reluctant approval, Sarah embarked on her new path. She threw herself into the work with renewed passion, traveling the globe to meet with entrepreneurs and visionaries. The Silicon Valley startup became her first major project, and under her guidance it flourished, developing technologies that promised to revolutionize energy distribution in developing countries. As months passed, Sarah found the fulfillment she had been missing. She was no longer just a corporate figurehead, but a mentor and a catalyst for change. Her work allowed her to blend the business acumen she had developed with her passion for making a tangible difference in people's lives. One evening, as she walked along the beach near her Dubai home, Sarah reflected on the twists and turns her life had taken. She had climbed to the pinnacle of corporate success, only to realize that her true calling lay elsewhere. It hadn't been an easy journey, but she felt for the first time in years that she was exactly where she was meant to be. What Sarah didn't know was that her unconventional decision had set in motion a series of events that would not only reshape her own future, but would have far-reaching implications for the entire business world. As she stood on the threshold of this new chapter in her life, the greatest challenges and the greatest rewards still lay ahead. 3 years had passed since Sarah's surprising decision to step down from the role of global CEO. In that time, her innovative ventures division had become the crown jewel of Harmony Global, identifying and nurturing startups that were changing the face of industries across the globe. Sarah had found her true calling, blending her business acumen with her passion for positive change. On a warm Dubai evening, Sarah stood at the podium of a grand conference hall, addressing a room full of the world's most influential business leaders and innovators. The occasion was the launch of the Mitchell Foundation, her latest initiative aimed at fostering ethical entrepreneurship in developing nations. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady and confident, "our world stands at a crossroads. We have the power to shape the future of business, to prove that profit and purpose are not mutually exclusive. The Mitchell Foundation is not just about funding, it's about creating a new paradigm of success." As she spoke, Sarah's eyes scanned the audience, landing on familiar faces. There was Lisa Zhang, beaming with pride, Marcus Reynolds nodding in approval, and in the back, partially hidden in shadow, Mr. Al-Rahman, his expression unreadable, but his presence a silent acknowledgement of how far they had both come. After her speech, as Sarah mingled with guests, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning, she found herself face to face with a young woman in a neat uniform. "Ms. Mitchell," the woman said, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I had to thank you." Sarah looked at her quizzically. "Thank me? For what?" "I'm a housekeeper at the Harmony Global headquarters," the woman explained. "Your story, it inspired me. I've been taking night classes studying business. I hope that one day I can follow in your footsteps." Emotion welled up in Sarah's throat. She took the young woman's hands in hers. "What's your name?" "Aisha," the woman replied. "Aisha," Sarah said softly. "Never let anyone tell you what you're capable of. Your journey is your own and it can take you to amazing places." As Aisha walked away, visibly moved, Sarah felt a presence beside her. It was Mr. Al-Rahman. "You've come a long way from serving tea in my study," he said, a hint of warmth in his voice. Sarah smiled. "We both have, I think." Mr. Al-Rahman nodded thoughtfully. "You know, when you first spoke up at that dinner years ago, I was furious. I thought you were overstepping your bounds. But now I see that you were just beginning to find your true place in the world." "It wasn't an easy journey," Sarah admitted. "The worthwhile ones never are," he replied. "But you've changed more than just your own life, Sarah. You've changed the way we do business. You've changed me." As the evening wound down, Sarah found a quiet moment alone on the balcony overlooking the glittering Dubai skyline. She thought about the twists and turns her life had taken, from an invisible housekeeper to a powerful CEO, and finally to a position where she could truly make a difference. She thought about Aisha and all the other men and women out there with dreams bigger than their current circumstances. She thought about the startups she had helped nurture, the communities transformed by ethical business practices, the bridges built between cultures and ideologies. A soft breeze carried the scent of jasmine, reminding her of that fateful night in the Al-Rahman mansion when she had first found her voice. Sarah realized that in many ways she had come full circle, but this circle was ever expanding, touching more lives, creating more opportunities. As she gazed out at the city lights, Sarah felt a deep sense of peace and purpose. She knew that her journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new obstacles to overcome, but she was ready for them. She had found her true calling, not in titles or power, but in the ability to inspire and empower others to reach their full potential. The future stretched out before her, full of possibilities. And Sarah Mitchell, once an invisible woman, now stood tall, ready to face that future with courage, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to making the world a better place, one business decision at a time. As the night deepened, Sarah made her way back to the conference hall. The event was winding down, but the energy of possibility still hung in the air. She caught snippets of conversations, business leaders discussing new ethical initiatives, young entrepreneurs excitedly sharing their visions for change. Sarah smiled to herself, knowing that this was just the beginning. The seeds she had planted were taking root, promising a future where business could be a force for good in the world. And she would be there, guiding, mentoring, and leading by example every step of the way. Fimda Historia. Dear listeners, we hope Sarah's incredible journey from housekeeper to visionary leader has inspired you. To continue this emotional voyage, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexities of life. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to reading your thoughts in the comments.